So I'm reminding students of the million little things you have to know on this test, like domain is about the x values and range is about the y. Domain's about left to right, down to up, and you have to have brackets when it touches something. Here's one. V-shape that's been shifted a little bit so that it's hitting right there at 1. I'll tell you the point. It's x is 1, y is 0, right there. Would you please tell me the domain of this and the range of this? Come on, you do this. Lance, what do you think the domain is? How far to the left does it go? It goes to the left and the right, which will be in here. Yes. So what does infinitely to the left mean? Like, what do I put here? Hint, it's not infinity. It's close. All right, good thing we talked. That infinitely to the left is negative infinity. Negative infinity sign, or you could say INF. All right. Caden, infinitely to the right would be too easy. I'm going to ask you for the range, Caden.
All right.
What's the lowest it goes, Caden?
0.
Yes, and you acted like you were asking a question there. If you're not sure between these two, I know you picked the right one. Just remember it's about the y. And the y is that number. So it had to be a 0. And then tell me more. 0, comma.
Infinite.
Yep. And then I need brackets or parentheses, so.
I don't know.
Okay. It touches the 0. See, there's a dot there.
All right.
Bracket. Infinities always have parentheses because you can't touch them. All right. Considering that, I called on like 4 people, and 2 of them had the minor mistakes in their answers. We should spend a little more time on domain. Let's do another one like that. I hope you learned from that one. Here's an upside down parabola. Let's say that this spot right here, the highest it goes, by the way, is at 6, 2. Then my question is, what's the domain? What's the range? This is not one of those things where we're going to learn it once and forget it. You are going to be doing domain over and over and over. They're like so important for the rest of math. You do them in pre-calc. You do them in calculus. You do them in FST. Some of you will take next year because you're probably going to say, I don't want to take pre-calc, that's too hard. Domain and range is in all of those classes. And it's on the ACT test. And it's a topic that the state of Minnesota says you have to know, so it's on the MCA tests. So there's lots of reasons to know this. All right. Domain. Mr. Nichols.
Hey, what's up?
What do you do again for domain again?
Domain is basically finding left to right.
Left to right. So then what is it?
I would say since it's going to be infinite on either side.
Yeah,
I would say it's going
yeah.
to be negative infinite and then parentheses infinite with parentheses.
Perfecto. Nice job. Okay. Zane, the range. Yes. Now, I know that there's somebody in the audience today that had the 2 first, because it happens all the time. You're like, ooh, the range is about the y. So you grab the 2 and you put it in. Why would that be wrong to have the 2 first? Because it has to be low to high. And the ultimate low thing is negative 2. Sorry, negative infinity is way lower than anything else. Okay. Any questions on that one? I need to get a feeling here. How many of you got that one right? The domain and range. Okay, good. I feel like you got domain and range down. If you don't, you're going to have to ask me questions today. Next thing, if I gave you this, you'd have to tell me in order. Remember yesterday, what did I say you always do last if the order matters? The inside is always last. Give me the name of the 3 things that these are called transformations that happen to this function. See, it started out as a simple y equals x squared function, but then they did a bunch of stuff to it. They moved it this way, they moved it that way, they flipped it this way. And remember to do the order right. It's fairly simple if you remember, just do the inside last. There won't be a word bank on your test, but I'll give you one right now. You should have used the word vertical or horizontal somewhere. You should have used the word reflection somewhere. You should have said up or down. And you should have said left or right. Now there is another word that we don't need for this one called stretch or shrink, but this one doesn't have a stretch or shrink. That would be like if there had been a 7 out in front like that, then that would have been a stretch, but there wasn't, so. Okay. These, I know from yesterday, these were challenging for kids. So in that case, I'll let you tell me. I'm not going to force you to tell me all 3 of them, but can you tell me one of them? Amina, give me one of these that you think you know. Vertical what? Vertical is correct because it's on the outside. You know the name for it? Reflect is correct. Yes, vertical reflect. And why is that first? Because it is like a -1 being multiplied, and that's more important than add. Multiply gets to go first before add. Now I do the add 7, and that's up 7. Remember I said this goes last? Left 3. Who had this exactly right? All right, we're about 3/4 of the class getting these right. All right, let's do one more like that. We'll do a x to the 3rd function. But I'm going to put a negative here and a +8 there. And I know some people are going to say, but I can't tell if that negative's on the inside. Here's my tip for you. If there aren't any parentheses, then we've always talked about a variable as an empty parentheses. So that's where the parentheses are. If there aren't any parentheses. You know, the x could be erased. You could put numbers in there. You know what I'm talking about? So, moral of the story, that negative is on the outside because if you wanted to put in parentheses, you'd have to put them there. All right, so tell me, in this case, there's only 2 changes. And it might be confusing to you because there's nothing on the inside. Well, then I guess that's last. So that negative in the front. More in the back row. Is that vertical or horizontal? That negative in the front. That is a vertical. Vertical what? Reflect. And then this is too easy. It's up 8. There we go. And that's the right order too. Can't you just do them any way you want? No! You gotta follow PEMDAS. Multiplying stuff goes first. Add, subtract goes last. All right, one more. This will be the trickiest one. See if we can pull this one off. It's got 4 things. You should know which one's last. Now I'm going to do a follow-up question because this is totally something you have to know on the test also. Can you find me 5 points, but this one's probably, let's just for practice, just do 3 points. On the test, you'd have to find 5. Find me 3 points that work in here. And hint, some kids are going to say, you can't do it because there's a negative under the square root. No, that just means you have to use negative numbers, like -1. And when you put in a -1, the negatives cancel, and then it works. Okay, so you can totally do this. But I will admit, this is the trickiest problem by far. And this would count as 2 separate points. One would be for, can you do the order right? And one would be, can you find me the points? All right, it's going to take you a few minutes. Give it your best shot. So, if you put in negative numbers, this will work. So I'm going to put in a -1, and I get -1 is 1, because there's 2 negatives, right? And then it's square root of 1, which is 1, times it by -2 is -2. -2 plus 5 is 3. Raise your hand if you had 3 for that one. Okay, good. Now I'm going to put in a few more a little faster. 0 is awesome because square root of 0, -0 is still 0, and that is just 0. And all of the whole beginning becomes 0, plus 5 is 5. And then I'm going to put in, square root of 4 works nice, so I'll use -4. That way when I put in a -4, I get +4. Square root of 4 is 2. -2 times 2 is -4, plus 5 is 1. Raise your hand if you had 3 good points. Okay, awesome. Then as long as you can graph those. All right. Now how about the order? Well, the last thing you're going to do is the inside. And I'm going to erase this and get it back to the way it was. It was a -x in there. So -x. The inside will be last. I'm going to go put it last right away. It will be a vertical or horizontal? We're doing the inside right now. Horizontal on the inside. So that's a horizontal reflect. So you see how many chances there are to mess up if you said vertical instead of horizontal? You're toast right there. The whole problem's wrong. Got to memorize those. Horizontal on the inside. Isn't there also a one on the outside? Yeah, but that's not the last one. That's the first one. And that's a vertical reflect. That's what this negative is right there. How about this 2? That is a vertical, because it's on the outside, stretch. Why is it a stretch? Because it's a 2. If it had been a 1/2, it would have been a shrink.
So the only time it shrinks is 1/2?
I don't think that you really think that only thing that would make it shrink is a half. But how about this? Well, let's just talk through a few of them. What if there was a 2 on the outside of your function? That's a stretch. What if there's a 1/2? Then that's a shrink.
Okay.
Do you think those are the only 2 numbers we could ever use? Of course not. But what if I said 7? Do you think that that's going to be stretch or shrink?
Stretch.
Stretch. What if I said 1/7? Shrink, because it's going to make it small.
Okay.
All right, so that 2 was a vertical stretch, and you have to at least put 2, and if you wanted credit in honors, you'd have to say by a factor of 2. All right. I know some of you, it's sophomores, right? Yep, sophomores, there's 6 of you, I think, that have to go. I understand. All right, and then the third thing here, yep, was an up 5. I recommend you guys watch this video for the rest of the tips. All right. Okay, so now one last one that's going to, a lot of people are going to get this wrong because it's going to blow their mind just too much. What if there's a fraction, but it's on the inside? And let's put a negative on the outside. 3 things. That 2/3 on the inside, you have to know this kind. You got to know all these rules like, oh, things on the inside are opposite of what you would think. Things on the inside are horizontal. A fraction normally means that it's going to shrink. A whole number means stretch. Can you be careful? This test, more than any previous test, is going to be testing, can you be careful? Lindholm, can you tell me what has to go last?
Horizontal shrink by a factor of 2/3.
He said horizontal because it's on the inside. He said shrink because it's a fraction. He said by a factor of 2/3.
Yeah.
All right, you were close, but you got fooled by the whole opposite of what you would think thing. You didn't do the opposite of what you would think. It's not a shrink, it's a stretch. Opposite day. Why? You just said a second ago. Because it's on the inside. And I was reminding you, do the opposite of what you would think. And so then it's not 2/3. 3/2. What? Because it's opposite of what you would think. You would think it's a 2/3, so it's actually a 3/2. I know. It's like the opposite day. It's like you would think you walk out the door right there, but no, today you're going to go through the window. Like, what? It's the opposite of what you would think. Okay. And now, I warned you, everybody's going to get it wrong. So if you thought, well, this is just like all the other ones. No, it's not, because it was weird on the inside. Do the opposite of what you would think. All right, now this negative, is that on the inside? So I have to like do opposite of everything? No, that's on the outside. So it's a vertical on the outside and it's a reflect. I think we did that 3 times. And then this, down 8. That's the easy part. Yes?
If you like switch the 2/3 to 3/2, because
Yes.
on the inside, then why like if it's like x minus 2, like why don't we switch it to 1/2?
This is a stretch, and they're different than a move. The move, so like what she just said is, if it was like this on the inside, why don't we say that that's opposite also? Well, we do, because instead of saying left to, which is what that should seem like to you, it's going to go right to. Now, I know it could be even more complicated if we had to also make it half. You don't have to do that.
But isn't that what you switch when you did the vertical or horizontal? But then you still switch the number?
I get what you're saying, but if I use the word stretch, do you get why I picked the word stretch? Because it's the opposite of what I would think. Okay, if I pick the word stretch, then I have to have a number bigger than 1, or it won't actually stretch. Does that part make sense? Okay. All right, cool. So, I'll give you one more like that, because I know these are tricky. This is the careful test. Actually, I'm not going to put, this one's just too complicated. That's too much. Too much. I could put a negative on there, though. I think that'd be okay. I could see us testing you on, there's a negative, and there's a fraction, and there's an x, and then there's like a -3. You're starting to get the idea that these are always really easy. It's the inside that gets so weird. 2 things on the inside and the 1 thing on the outside, and you should know the inside stuff goes last. If the inside stuff goes last, then the outside stuff must be first. So did you start with down 3? That makes sense. And it's normal, and we trust it, and it makes sense. The inside stuff, if it ever is making sense to you, then be careful. All right, so there is a negative on the inside. That is a horizontal on the inside. That's a law. Had you write it down. Horizontal inside, vertical outside. Horizontal, and then, is that a stretch or a shrink? Well, it seems like a shrink, so it's a stretch. And then it seems like I should write 1/3, but I write by a factor of 3. And the other thing that's in there, and these 2 can be reversed, by the way, because they're part of the same number. I don't care which of the inside ones you do first, because they're the same number. It's a negative on the 1/3. The negative there is a reflect, but you gotta say what kind of reflect. Horizontal reflect. And again, these can be reversed if you want. Doesn't matter. Who had that one right? Sweet. All right. You've gotten good at those now. At least most of you. All right. So I've got a little quiz for you to take at this point, which is practicing some of the key stuff. I would say the only thing left, I'm afraid if I give out the quiz now that I won't be able to get you back at the end. So what I'm going to do is the last melon. You have to graph. So let's say you had this one. You should know, oh yeah, it's a V shape because that's an absolute value. And you should be able to know it's been flipped upside down, so it's like a mountain shape. So let's say a kid graphs this and they get doot, 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 doot. Why am I going to mark it wrong? That's for sure wrong. What shape is this supposed to be?
A V.
A V. Does that look like a V to you?
No. 'Cause
No.
that makes it positive numbers.
You need to keep graphing until you see it go like, oh, doot, doot, doot. Now it's a V shape that's upside down. See what I'm saying? If you just get a straight line, you're doing it wrong. All right, so here's a typical hard question from the test. Graph that. Okay. Write it down. Now you're not feeling amazing. Fresh air in here. Well, what numbers can you pick? Any number you want. Just pick smart numbers. Don't pick 17. Things that work easy. Do you know the absolute values? Take whatever's inside and make it positive. But then there's a negative on the outside. That's going to force it to go back to negative. All right. I hope you put in some simple things like 0 and 1. I said always put in a negative number, otherwise that whole left side of the graph won't have anything because x is -1 gets you to the left side. So you should put in a negative. If you didn't already, put in 1. So when I put in 0, I get absolute value of 2, then the negative comes on after it comes out positive. So then the negative turns it to -2. 0, -2 is down here. When I put in a 1, negative 3. When I put in a 2, oh wait, put in a negative 1 next. Negative 1 plus 2 is 1. Absolute value of that is 1. Then I make it negative at the end, negative 1. I'm starting to get the feeling all the answers will be negative, and they are. 0, negative 2 has already been graphed. 1, negative 3. Negative 1, negative 1. And if you stopped right there, you are not going to get the credit because it is a straight line and is supposed to be a V. So I guess I better make some more points. Now, if you want to kind of cheat, it's not cheating, but if you want to kind of cheat and say, well, it's supposed to be a V shape that is flipped and moved left 2, you'd know that you're going to kind of be here. You know that it's going to be an upside down V going kind of there. See what I mean? So then you can know which way to go. I'm going to make more and more negative points, like negative 2 and negative 3. So I put in negative 2, and then I get 0. That's right there. So now I've got these 4 points, and I'm going to put in negative 3, and all of a sudden, finally, it turns around and starts making a V. And that's going to be negative 1. And then if I go to negative 4, it'll keep going. Negative 2. Negative 4, negative 2 is like right there. And now it's a V shape going down. So if you're confused about why you're getting a straight line, you just didn't make enough points yet. If you want to know which direction to make the points, make a little sketch. Go, I know it's an upside down V that's been moved to the left. It must kind of look like this. And then you can go, oh, that's what it's going to look like. All right. Now, here's your little quiz. There's 5 questions. Just kind of make sure you're on top of what's going on. And here we go. We're going to grade this in class in just a minute. Okay, pro tip for you. Problem 3, the range. A ton of kids have it wrong right now. I guarantee it. Just double check yourself that you really figured out the range correctly. Now a pro tip on number 5. Try putting in 2 on number 5. If you put in 2 on number 5, you should get 2 comma negative 5. If you're not doing it that way, you're doing it wrong. Try putting in a 2 on number 5. Because you'll take half of the 2, then the absolute value, then you make it negative, then you subtract 4. If you put in a 2, you get negative 5. If that's not how you were doing it, you're doing it wrong. I probably would have used all even numbers on number 5, because otherwise you're going to get decimals. And you can get decimals. Decimals are legal. But if you used even numbers, you could cut them in half really easy. And if on number 5, you're getting a straight line with your dots, You better make more dots until you can see where that V is. It's got to be a V shape. Okay, now you may not be done, and that's okay, because right now I just want to read you the first couple answers. Number 1, you should have said it was a vertical reflect, and right 5. Who's on track so far? Good. Number 2, you should have said it was a vertical stretch, BFO 2. If you don't say the number 2, I can't give it to you. Up 7 and horizontal reflect. It did not say on that problem that you had to do it in order, but the inside goes last. Okay, number 3, and the rest of them you should check online because I'm going to post this key. Finish up the review practice test. The test is tomorrow. If you miss tomorrow, you'll have to take it the day you come back. That's all I got for you for today.